what's going on, guys? This is DropThisBox, and I hope all of you guys out there are having a fantastic day today. And today we're going to be talking about Friday the 13th Part 2, which is another favorite film of mine when it comes to the things that transpired within that film itself. So I am super excited to discuss my overall thoughts on this film. So if you guys have anything you want to say about this movie, if there's anything in specific that you guys want to let me know how you personally feel about this film, as always, be sure to let me know down below. So what immediately struck me about Friday the 13th Part 2 was how much it improved on the original while carving its own identity. Because it didn't feel like it was riding on the coattails of the first film, it generally brought something new to the table. The atmosphere, the pacing, and even the characters felt sharper and more polished. From the opening moments, I could sense that this sequel was going to elevate the franchise. And one thing I really appreciated was how the movie handled suspense. Instead of relying solely on jump scares or gore, it leaned into the tension and atmosphere. There was this creepy dread throughout the film that always kept me on edge. The kills were shocking, but they didn't feel like the sole focus. The build up to each one was just as impactful and making the scares feel earned rather than cheap ones. And the setting also played a big role in why Part 2 stood out to me. While the original was centered on the camp itself, this movie expanded its scope to the surrounding woods. The dense, shadowy forest made everything feel more claustrophobic and dangerous, and I just loved how the movie used that environment to its advantage, creating an immersive experience where danger could lurk anywhere. Part 2 felt like a bold step forward for the franchise because it wasn't afraid to take risks, whether it was introducing Jason as the killer or leaning more heavily into the psychological suspense. It just set the tone for what this series could become, and that's what made it such a standout entry for me. And seeing Jason Voorhees take his first steps as the killer in Part 2 completely reshaped my understanding of the franchise. I had always known Jason as this unstoppable force with a hockey mask, but this version of him was raw and unrefined. He wore a sack over his head, moved with a clumsy kind of rage, and came across as much more human. That vulnerability made him even scarier because it felt like he could come out of nowhere and strike at any moment. And what stood out to me was how different Jason's kills felt in the movie compared to later entries. There was an unpredictability to his attacks. He didn't have the precision or calculated moves he would develop later. Instead, there was a frantic, almost desperate energy to him, which made each encounter nerve-wracking. Watching him stumble and lash out made me realize how dangerous and volatile he was in these early stages. I also loved how much the movie gave just enough insight into Jason's motivations without over-explaining them. His actions were rooted in grief and revenge over his mother's death, which gave him a tragic edge. He wasn't just a mindless killer, he was someone shaped by trauma, and that made him all the more compelling. It was just fascinating to see this side of him before he became the unstoppable legend that we know today. And to me, this version of Jason represents the beginning of his legacy. It's raw, it's messy, and it's also incredibly effective. Watching him evolve throughout the series is one thing, but seeing where it all began in Part 2 gave me a deeper appreciation for his character and what made him such an iconic figure in horror. And Ginny is hands down my favorite final girl in the Friday the 13th series. And it's not just because of how clever she is, there is a relatability to her character that sets her apart. She's not portrayed as invincible, she gets scared, she makes mistakes, but she never gives up. That balance of vulnerability and determination makes her feel real, and that's what made me root for her the entire time. What really impressed me about Ginny was her ability to think on her feet. The way she used psychology against Jason pretending to be his mother was such a brilliant moment. It showed that she wasn't just relying on brute force or luck to survive, she was outsmarting her attacker, and that kind of quick thinking made her stand out from the other final girls and proved that survival was as much about wit as it was about strength. Another thing I love about Ginny is how independent and assertive she is, because from the beginning she challenges the norms of the camp, standing up to Paul and speaking her mind. And that confidence carries through to her confrontation with Jason, where she refuses to back down despite the odds being stacked against her. It's inspiring to watch her fight back with everything she has, even when it seems like all hope is lost. And for me, Ginny is the ultimate final girl in Friday the 13th, because she embodies what survival truly means. She's smart, resourceful, and human in a way that feels authentic. Her journey in part 2 isn't just about defeating Jason, it's about proving that strength comes from resilience and quick thinking. She's the reason this movie resonated with me as much as it did. Looking back, Friday the 13th Part 2 is a movie that left a lasting impression on me for so many reasons. It wasn't just a sequel, it felt like the beginning of something bigger. From the atmosphere to the characters to the introduction of Jason, everything about it clicked in a way that few sequels managed to achieve. It took everything the original did and amplified it, creating a horror experience I'll never forget. One thing that stuck with me was how immersive the atmosphere was. The camp and surrounding woods felt like characters in their own right, adding to the sense of dread that hung over the entire movie. The filmmakers used every creak, shadow, and silence to their advantage, making me feel like I was right there with the characters. That kind of tension isn't easy to pull off, but part 2 absolutely nailed it. I also think about Ginny and Jason every time I revisit this movie. Ginny's resilience and intelligence made her one of the most compelling final girls I've seen within this series, while Jason's raw, unpolished presence as a killer gave the franchise its true identity. Their dynamic created some of the most intense moments in the series, and I still find myself on edge of my seat during their final confrontation. Part 2 is another movie that solidified my love even further for the Friday the 13th franchise. It gave me a taste of what the series could achieve when it balanced suspense, character development, and genuine scares. It's a film that stays with you not just for its iconic moments, but for how it makes you feel, completely captivated and utterly terrified. But Friday the 13th Part 2 is definitely a movie I can go back to at any single point of time and just remember all the good times that I've had with this film, because like the topics that I discussed throughout this video, there's just so many different things I can pull from when it comes to a lot of the things that stood out to me when it comes to this film. And like I said, this very film extended my love even further when it came to how I feel about the Friday the 13th franchise, because with getting Jason in this movie, that's huge, because we heard everything about him in the original movie. Now that we're seeing him in flesh, I mean, it's a really good thing, because now we can see how this character evolves from this movie all the way until the current Friday the 13th movies, just to follow the whole journey with the character, and also just getting that little taste of exactly like how the series is going to evolve as well. It's just a really good thing to reflect and look back at. But if you guys have any thoughts of your own that you guys want to share with me when it comes to Friday the 13th Part 2, like, is there a specific scene that you're a huge fan of? Is there any characters throughout this film that you really love? Is there a specific kill that really stood out to you? Anything in general that revolves around Friday the 13th Part 2 that you guys want to share with me, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And if you guys enjoy the content on this channel, be sure to like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. If you guys want to follow me on my social media, be sure to check out my Twitter, which I'm usually active on the most, my Instagram, my TikTok, and my Facebook. All the links to my social media are located in the description below, so be sure to follow me on all those. And if you guys want to be notified whenever I drop a video on the channel, be sure to click on that bell below so you guys know right away when a new video drops. But other than that, I hope all of you guys are having a fantastic day, wherever the day may be, if it's the daytime, the nighttime, or the evening. And I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, peace out.